It's great to be here. As Professor Bartscherer mentioned, I'm pretty new. I've been here a year. And I thought the best way that I could tell you about the Human Rights Program here was to start by telling you about why I came here and what I was excited about. I've been working in human rights for more than 20 years, since the time that I left law school. I worked for all of the major human rights organizations like Human Rights Watch, Global Rights, the Human Rights First. I worked with Amnesty International. I spent time with the United Nations. And I worked as the movement began to grow and to expand. And for the last 15 years, I've been working in law schools as a professor, well, first at Harvard and then as a professor at Columbia. And I had a chance to be close to the action still around the world as my own work changed from looking at human rights abuses in parts of Africa to looking at the ways that economic actors behave, that mining companies around the world, and more recently tea plantations in India, and being able to stay involved. One of the things that was kind of surprising to me was as I went on with my career, I kept hearing about what was going on at Bard College, this little college in upstate New York, which didn't seem to be an obvious place for the kind of activism or work or intellectual engagement that I expected. I spent most of my time otherwise in urban areas and graduate programs. And I had known the guy who started the Human Rights Program here for a long time, a guy named Tom Keenan. And I was always impressed. He didn't come out of a law background. He wasn't a practitioner in that way. His PhD is in comparative literature, a really smart, thoughtful, committed person with a multidisciplinary perspective who found a way to build a program at Bard College. And from the time that he came here, I followed what he was doing and heard about it, and heard about all kinds of people that I really admired coming to teach here, spending time here, people whose material I read in journals and magazines, people like Ian Baruma, Mark Danner, an amazing photographer named Gilles Perez, people who are engaged in the world in this expanding human rights movement and found a real value in spending time at Bard College, working with Bard students and working here and continuing to be engaged. So that when Tom Keenan called me a couple of years ago and said, so where do I look to find somebody who's a human rights practitioner, a lawyer, to come to Bard? And we're expanding our program. We've decided that we have this great program, multidisciplinary. We have people in anthropology and politics and economics and film and photography, all of whom teach in our programs. And we finally decided we wanted somebody who had a knowledge of the human rights movement itself and the law and how the law worked. Where do I go to look? And I said, well, gosh, maybe I'd like that job. And that began a conversation that led to my coming here. And what I found here already is exactly what I was excited about. I found the students who are willing to be inspired and then take that inspiration and act on it, and an institution that enables them to do that. Just a word, for example, about what this summer, what did I do? Well, I happened to be involved I was asked to go to Israel to do part of an investigation for a human rights group looking at the conditions of Bedouin in the Negev area. And while I was there, as I was doing my work, I stopped by to see, and you'll hear more about this, the involvement that Bard has in the West Bank and with the Palestinian activism. I stopped by to a program in the Palestinian refugee camp of Dheisheh, a program called Campus in the Camps. And who runs it? Well, it's a Bard initiative with a partnership out of a university, a campus on the West Bank, El Quds. I think Bard has got to be the only school in the United States with the courage to have a partnership with a school in the West Bank to begin with, and then beyond that to have one of the people there in who's teaching saying, it's not enough to just teach a college where the elites. It's not the same perhaps as a prison program, but a refugee camp in the West Bank. It's doing what the prison program did as well. It's going to the place where people otherwise aren't going to get to you. It's going one step further, not just going to the West Bank, going into the camps to teach and to engage people in the camps in an analysis of their own conditions in their life. And I had just an inspirational time there with this program. And this was not a program initiated by a student, but it was initiated through the same kinds of creativities, and it's drawn students in so that more and more students are spending time in Israel, in the West Bank, in Palestinian spaces where otherwise it would seem off limits. You'd tell your parents and they'd think, wait, can you go there? You can stay overnight in a refugee camp. You can work with the students there. And that's part of what BARD is. Where else did I go? I was in New Orleans to meet some of the students who are now here in this room. But while I was there, I thought, gosh, I hear there's a BARD program here. I'd like to find out about that program. And I met a guy named Stephen Tremaine, who'd been a student here at BARD. And at the time of Katrina, he, along with others, felt that they really needed to do something for our people, our brothers and sisters in New Orleans, and education was what BARD had to offer. So we helped to initiate a high school program in New Orleans that has continued and is now a part of the high school system in New Orleans. And he too had found his inspiration in the human rights program at BARD and found a sense that he could move on and that he could make the connections and use the institution and the vision that it had to build something more. And then just a couple of nights ago, I was in the city, and my partner works in international labor rights with a union, and she said, "I've got to introduce you to my new colleague." And who is he but another BARD student who had worked with the Human Rights Program here and worked with some of the other programs and found inspiration, and has been working with Unite here in New York. Probably one of the knows more about union and labor organizing in airports than anybody on earth. Has worked in the airports around the United States and has made that his area of specialization. So the people that BARD brought in that inspired me to come here, I now have as my colleagues. The students that I see coming, finding ways to develop programs, to invent, to move on. It seems a way of life, and the opportunities are there. And I feel like the Human Rights Program, as far as I can tell, it's a place. I mean, there's BARD students. All of you come here with a sense that you're of changing the world. So it's not exclusive to the Human Rights Program, but the Human Rights Program functions to some degree as the add-on, the ethical, the demonstration of an ethical commitment that goes along with whatever else you're studying. I've seen the students who are anchored in economics, and they're thinking about economic development, and they're doing human rights because they want to think at the same time about how they're going to bring that to the world, how they're going to make it practical. And I've seen the students studying anthropology who take on human rights and think as well about how they're going to make the study of culture and the engagement with culture into a progressive action that they're going to take forward into the world. And the same with the students who come with a background in politics or come with a background even in film. And the human rights and the Human Rights Program says, okay, let's take it to another level. Let's take it to the level of engagement in the world. And let's get from imagining how this could be to making it real. And it's something that you can do while you're still a BARD student, and it's something that then with the BARD alumni and the BARD faculty and this decade of this wonderful program and its alumni around the world, you can take on into what will become your career afterwards. So that's what I found as the inspiration and what really I felt is very real as a teacher here. Some of the things we're going to be thinking about this year, and any of you, I mean, the Human Rights Program has a weekly speaker series on Tuesday evenings that's just been really inspiring. We take on a bunch of different issues, and I try and bring in, this year I'll be trying to bring in many of the people that I've worked with over time. But we wanted to make sure to spend a lot of time this year on migration issues, labor rights issues, think about the local questions that are involved in labor rights and also in some of the larger questions. Some of you have probably heard about the organizing of low-paid workers in New York and elsewhere in the food services industry, and we'll be looking at that and bringing people in. We'll be doing some more talks on domestic violence. We have some great filmmakers who I've worked with for years who've been working on a pretty famous case of a woman named Jessica Gonzalez, who's faced a sort of horrible story in her own life, and now is the subject of this film, and this, the filmmakers are going to come and show that. We also have had students, maybe you've heard about this, but last year students initiated a project on drones. They started it as an independent project, they turned it into a class, and now they're looking to make it into a larger program going forward, and they, together with the Human Rights Program, will be sponsoring a series of events on drones. So those are some of the issues that we'll be looking at. There's a lot more. You know, come to us, to our office. We're in the, you never know what those buildings are, but it's along Annandale Road. It's one of those little white houses. It's the same space where the Hannah Arendt Center is. You'll see the sign for it. And, you know, wander in, and if you've got an issue, you've got something you're interested in, you know, drop in and talk about it, and think about the classes that we offer.